All right, and we are live. Welcome to the BrainDrive weekly development call live stream. Our mission here at BrainDrive is to build a superior user-owned alternative to big tech AI systems. I'm Dave Waring, and I handle the operations side here at BrainDrive.
And I'm David Jones, and I handle the technical operations side here at BrainDrive.
One of the pieces of feedback that we've gotten is, what the hell are you guys doing? This is really confusing, which we understand, and we're taking that feedback. So in future calls, this will be more off the cuff and on the fly, but I've worked on an opening pitch for this that I want to read, and then we can get Dave and anyone else who's on the call that would care to share their feedback. Before I jump into this, we do, in addition to doing these live calls, live streams every Monday at 10 a.m. Eastern Time, we do post these recordings over on our forum at community.braindrive.ai. So we encourage anyone who's interested to participate either in the live stream or over on the forums or both. And again, you can do that at community.braindrive.ai or here in the chat on the live stream. So here's my pitch. BrainDrive is an open source user owned AI system. This is our weekly dev call. Every week we go through what we shipped, what we're building next, and how you can get involved. If you're new here, let me take 2 minutes to explain how BrainDrive is different from other AI systems. BrainDrive is built so that you always own and control your AI system. No lock in, not to the platform, not to the model, not to a particular technology choice. We do this by putting everything that makes your AI system personal to you at the center of the architecture. Your documents, your preferences, your history, your skills, your workflows. We call this your memory. Your memory is what makes your AI system yours. It's what you want to take with you to any AI system you use. The architecture that BrainDrive is built on guarantees that every component depends on your memory, and your memory depends on nothing else. Models, interfaces, tools, they all plug in and are easily swappable. Your memory doesn't care, nothing resets. This also means your BrainDrive improves as fast as the open source ecosystem does. New features and functionality arrive via tools, not an expanded code base. Use any publicly available tool in your BrainDrive or build your own. We don't have to build a new open source ecosystem around BrainDrive. We can adopt the one that already exists. The architecture behind all of this is called the personal AI architecture. It's open source, MIT licensed, and it's what we're actively building right now. BrainDrive is our implementation of this architecture, but the personal AI architecture is designed for anyone to build on. It's language agnostic, 4 components, 2 APIs, clean boundaries. Build it in Go, Rust, Python, whatever you want. So whether you're here to contribute to BrainDrive or to use BrainDrive as a reference for building your own personal AI system, this call is for you. We're in the final stages of launching BrainDrive, and today's call is about our progress towards that goal, plus planning out the next week of work. If you have questions, comments, or ideas as we go through the call, hit us up in the chat or in the forums if you're watching the recording, and we're happy to answer. Let's get into it.
I'm good. That was, I really am, because the key points without getting, I call it, or as we talk, is like I get into the forest a lot. Without getting into the forest, which is critical for this, because this, as we've
Forums
joked,
if
is
you're
a
watching.
religion.
Yeah.
And as a religion, you can't get into the forest of telling you how to do something. It has to be just simply, this is how it's done. Now you do the details part. And that's what it has to be looked at as. And if you get people like me, all the techies who look at it, the first thing they want to do is jump. How do you're tackling this wrong? It's
Yeah.
like but the truth is, as I've learned to to work with the architecture, and more importantly, Nav's outcome of working with the architecture, because we've had 2 developers hit it. We both existed in a glass bubble, basically, so to speak. For those who didn't pay attention to last week's call, and we came to almost the same exact conclusion of this is how it should come together. Our nuances were in implementation, not in applying
All
the
right, before
architecture.
we get into that, it
Yep,
sounds like you're good.
yep,
Okay, you feel like we hit all the points there.
yep. When we differ, I think we differ only on defining a term. Like yesterday when we were talking agentic. What is agentic? And I'm
Yeah.
not going to get
All right.
into that.
Again, yeah. Okay. So, all right. So that's for this piece. If
Yep,
anybody has feedback, please let us know. I just want to show the interface work that I did last week, which I think will be quick because the
yep,
interface is designed to be simple and straightforward. And then we can jump into everything that you accomplished last week, including some of the stuff that you just briefly mentioned
yep.
there. Okay. So let me share the screen here. All right, so this is the new BrainDrive interface, and the ultimate goal of BrainDrive and this interface is to make it easy for our non-technical user. We refer to that persona as Katie Carter,
Hmm.
and to partner with AI in their own AI system to get that partnership kicked off and to make sure that the compounding benefits of working with AI in all areas of this non-technical user's life, a brain drive owner, as we call it, uh, accrue to that owner, the owner of the brain drive, and not to some big tech platform. So we have a very simple concept for how we think about this, which is the spec and build plan process that technical people have gone through to architect software, build software. It obviously works really well when you're working with AI to go through this interview, create the user stories, build the spec, and then build the build plan off of that and have the AI execute against the build plan and look back at the user stories to know if it's executed correctly or not. We found that this really works well for all areas. You can use that to do traditional project management, but you can even use it for any area of your personal life. For example, I want to improve my relationship with my wife, right? Well, what does that look like to me? Let's do an interview on that. Where do things stand currently? How does, that plan and that spec, even what that looks like to me, what improving my relationship with my wife looks like to me, may look completely different for Dave, right? And this is the first part of this is defining that. Then, once you've defined what is improving your relationship with your wife look like, those user stories, we say yes. Now the AI can work with you to put together this build plan, which is your plan for improving that relationship. And then you can work together with the AI to begin to execute and update that plan. So BrainDrive is going to be constructed out of the box to get over this cold start problem that a lot of people have with AI. It's like, I want to use AI, but I just don't know where to start because I have this blank screen. And what do I do? We want to very quickly get people over that. So this is the landing page of the interface that people are going to see. And I've been just working on right now just the UX of this. I haven't built in the interview spec and build plan yet, but the idea here is when you land on your Brain Drive Plus One, this is where you can just dump any thought,
Hmm.
but also this is where what's going to guide you through the onboarding process to Brain Drive to see which areas of your life you would like to dial in on and focus on to start improving. And then once you do that, you're going to go into whatever this project page is for where you've decided you want to start improve, and your spec and your build plan are going to be here, and you're going to be able to talk with your brain drive specifically about that. So, and you will also be able to edit the spec directly yourself. So your brain drive will be able to edit and update your spec, and you will be able to do that as well. And when you chat and you say, hey, remove, improve, system design skills. You just do it right there. It takes you back to the chat and you can start chatting with your brain drive there. And when you go back into the spec, you'll see that that's been removed. And all of these files live on your local file system. So all of this, including the interface, is under your complete ownership and control. You can download and run all this on your computer. And we're also going to have a managed hosted version of this, but is not going to be a traditional SaaS platform. is going to be more like a WordPress where it's self-hosted and you can host your brain drive with us. You
Yep.
can move it to your own computer. You can use another host to host your brain drive. So that's where we're going with this. So just a couple of other things. That's the main chat experience. We're very intentionally trying to be very focused on a very specific use case to get people over this cold start problem. And then we've designed the settings here so that you'll be able to initially use OpenRouter as your API key. In the future, we'll be adding local models through Olama. You'll be able to choose your default model. Initially, whatever you set here will be the model that will be used throughout the BrainDrive interface. In the future, we will give page by page specific models. And then the owner profile will be, the things about you that don't change, like you're a male that's this age, etc. And you'll be able to export your library, which it lives on your computer already if you're running it locally. But if you run it in the cloud or via a managed hosting service, you'll want to be able to export that so that it remains under your ownership and control. So we're trying to keep this very basic, but this is also MIT licensed and open source. So you can do whatever you want
Yep.
with it if you're a developer. You can also add your own interface. You don't have to use ours. You can rebuild this whole thing completely in the programming language of your choice. So, BrainDrive is really focused on that non-technical user in terms of how we position the product. But when you look at this as a builder, there's so much more that you're going to be able to do with BrainDrive, and the sky's the limit in terms of what we're going to be able to do with this system because it is designed to expand via tool use and
Yep.
not through an expanded code base. So that's my part for last week. Any additional thoughts on that, Dave, before we get into your stuff?
I think what can't be missed is not just through tool use, but even the front end is almost like a tool itself in the fact that it is just readily replaceable. It's like when I was working with it, I had three different interfaces, and at no point did any of them cause back end coding to need to be adjusted, to be changed. And I went from a terminal going inside Docker to a terminal on the regular terminal prompt, and then it had a browser terminal all working at the same time so I could do different things. And like I said, at no point it caused me to adjust my endpoints, my back end, or anything like that. Just I got a new interface. Let's go. And that's all I cared about. So it's like that's almost like an MCP component, but it's not really MCP. It's just it doesn't care. It's
Right.
like you have to follow the back end rules, and once you're doing that, it has been really driving, which your interface will be the next test to that functionality as well. How clean can we introduce a graphical interface now, and with minimal to no changes needed in the back end? So these are just further tests of the architecture and to make sure it does everything we want.
Great. All right.
Yep.
So I think one of the biggest things that you worked on, or probably the biggest thing that you worked on last week, is can we get this architecture working
Yep.
for an implementation, right? So up
Yep.
to this point, the personal AI architecture has been more of a blueprint, and
Yep.
BrainDrive is the first implementation of this architecture and one of, we hope, many implementations of this architecture going forward. So, what did you find out in terms of getting this implementation live?
Um, you have to follow it, and I know we've joked around with this, so I'll use two different words that should never be discussed on the internet, either political or religion. But you have to follow it like that. In other words, this is an idea or a concept. Don't get stuck in mud. Just take it as that, or and we like to call religion. 10 Commandments to building this architecture. There you go. Follow them, and you're good. Um, if you're into vibe coding, this makes it even easier because as when I'm trying to tell the AI to do something and I don't want to get my hands dirty, I say we're doing X, Y, Z. Follow the architecture to prevent drift, and it automatically knows what to do. It doesn't blink on me anymore, and it really has helped create a better product in the end with using AI because it's the checks and balances now. Full and hard. It's like you're using TypeScript. Great, I know how to do that, and I have this drift prevention mechanic or data that's sitting there. And I have my own primer that everybody can access, and I also have my blueprints. And so it prevents anything from getting out of bounds where I don't really have to go, check every line and all like that. So that was one of the key things. Nav and I have both said the same thing when we came out of this going, I could do a lot with this. Uh-oh. And that's where it's like I have to tone myself down because we're not targeting me and Nav. We're not targeting those people. This is that Katie. And Katie needs something that she can look at in 3 seconds and go, I know what to do. And then in 5 minutes go, this is really working for me. And not the other way around. When you touch a normal system in AI, especially, it's like you're spending 5 hours to figure out, okay, what's the first step? And then in truth, you're really working for it now.
Okay.
Because this,
So a few big picture ideas there that you've introduced that let me just follow up
yep,
on. The first is this concept of drift.
yep,
So the AI, the personal AI architecture, it has four components and two APIs.
yep,
And those are the internal components of the system. And then it has three external components, which are interfaces, any
yep.
client that speaks to the architecture. It is the tools in the system. And the third one is,
Models?
yes, models that you can swap the models.
Yep,
So, in order to avoid this lock-in
yep,
and keep your memory at the center of your brain drive, or if you're building on the personal AI architecture, whatever your implementation is, you have to keep the responsibilities of each component
yep,
within that component. And you can't have drift where, for example, the provider API, which is driving the model, is leaking intelligence into other components
yep,
of the system because that recouples the system, right? And if
yep,
you want to maintain memory at the center, your memory at the center, you need each of the other components of the system to be decoupled, right?
yep,
And so when Dave talks about drift, um, what he's looking for is the AI and developers in
yep,
general aren't used to programming this way.
yep.
And so responsibilities leak from one component to another. And you have to really watch and manage the AIs to make sure that that doesn't happen.
Because it's easy to cheat. That's the thing I think is, and
It's
that's what
easy
you're
to
doing.
cheat.
If you go against it, you're cheating, which we've all every developer's done. So this is a preventive mechanic to do not get lazy.
Right. And so this is another thing about this architecture is there's no enforcing mechanisms here. You're
Yep,
free because freedom is one of our pillars.
yep,
You can cheat if you want to, but you're not following the architecture if you do. Just like if you were following the architectural plans for the house, there's nothing that's going to say, well, we said in the architecture to put the beam here, but like if you're the builder, you can put the beam wherever you want,
yep.
right? So, but if you want to follow this architecture, the beam needs to be in this spot. So we're trying to, put together a blueprint that is not only just the philosophy behind this architecture, but like, okay, now let's get down to the implementation. What support can we give developers, whether that be a human developer, an AI, or a human developer and an AI working together to ensure we're sticking to this architecture, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and so what did you develop
The
to help with that?
you did the original. We'll call it the Bible, simply because I go at this as a religion. And that is a big in words, as normal Bibles are. They're big. They're made for human reading too. So they should be pointed out that so they're going to have a lot of words that are not necessary for developers and stuff like that. So the first case I did is I took the Bible and I said, okay, we need a primer now. This is what every developer uses. This is what I use. I don't need to know what anybody had for lunch. I just need to know what the rules are, what the laws are. If I get to an engine component, when I get to the engine component, I need to make sure that I follow, hey, it only does XYZ. It has no intelligence. It's not trying to dictate or run traffic. Its sole job is to take data coming in from the gateway, determine does it need authorization for stuff so it can collect the right information to provide, and then provide it to the model. And then the model takes care of being the brains of the operation and says, hey, okay, let's decide what to do with this now, not the engine. So it really enforces those things. And it also, when we were first talking, I developed this protocol that had probably some intelligence in it and like that, but we didn't want that. So we had to flatten the communication aspect for this, the packet that goes from point A to point B, it's just data. It's not trying to make a
Okay,
decision
so
as
we
well.
have a primer,
Yep,
and the primer's goal is to take this text that I wrote that's
yep,
meant for humans to read, and it's very long. It probably takes a couple of hours to wade through it all,
yep,
which even most humans aren't going to do, especially developers. And to boil that down into a primer that you can give to a developer, whether that be a person or an AI,
yep.
to like, okay, now let's build this. Yes?
Yes, yes,
And
yes.
is that primer done? Is it
Yes,
still
nope,
in
that
flight?
is nope,
Okay,
nope, nope.
where is that primer?
That exists on my repo and basically which serves as a draft for just like yours. And we're at the point now where we will merge it into the personal AI architecture. So it sits there along where we have the
Okay, so
documentation.
I would say a major goal for this week would be let's get that primer live
Yep,
so other developers can follow it.
yep,
And we should really probably redo the documentation organization in the personal AI architecture repo so that that primer is kind of front and center and the Bible, so to
yep.
speak, is in the background for people who have 2 hours that they want to read a book, basically.
And in the third level, I have a blueprint. And that is probably a more isolated layer underneath the primer.
Okay.
And these are prompts. These are data from prompts, and all the prompts are there that I used. And what its goal is to be just this is nailed down rules. If I'm dealing with the engine, or if I'm dealing with auth, if I'm dealing with your memory, the model, it doesn't matter what component of this entire architecture, it has been brought down to one page of rules. Do, don't do, what you need to watch out for. With every build we've done, we've had work logs where the drift took place, and we have taken those logs and turned it back into the primer and the blueprint to fine tune those so that when you give those to an AI, you're not just looking at data that's come from the Bible. You're now looking at work data and saying, hey, when we did this first one, we ran into 3 errors. We cleaned that up. So now that when we do that work, we don't have those 3 errors anymore. And we have enhanced drift checks going into.
Okay.
So,
So we want, to end up in a place where we can hand this documentation to a senior developer or to an AI,
yep,
really not even a senior developer, any developer,
yep,
and an AI, and they can build their own implementation of the
yep,
personal AI architecture, whether that be replicating BrainDrive and using the same defaults that we use and
yep,
technology choices that we use, or changing one thing or changing everything, right?
yep.
That would be our end goal. How close are we to that goal?
Um, I'll say 94, 95%. And
Okay.
that and I think the limitations is simply models right now. I don't think models are capable of doing a full 100% run without some nuances,
Do we
or we
know
just
where those nuances are?
they encounter it's like I'm down to when I build this now, I get four, maybe three issues that pop up.
Are
Each
they
one
the
are kind
same every
nope, nope,
time?
nope. They're kind of just a little different each time. And I haven't figured out where the checks need to be to prevent it. And like I said, I'm also wondering if this is just too big of a lift, as in vast. It doesn't matter how you come at the puzzle. It's a 1,000 piece puzzle. So
Yeah.
yeah, so you can break it down in little pieces. It still can't see it all, and if you take it all at once, still can't handle it all. It's like we almost need where we have a million context window to deal with, but that percentage of drift in that context gets better. We need to see that, I think, to really push into
Okay,
where
but
I
we have right now an implementation of the architecture that has no drift
no
and
drift,
is,
no drift. I did it. I cleaned up all the issues and mistakes, and then from our further conversations of things we want Katie to see, I have further pushed this project along to handle certain things.
Okay, and so we're kind of saying, all right, we've been able to use this architecture to build an implementation.
Yep,
We are going to focus on getting that implementation live
yep,
because that's our product. Other people can also follow the architecture and also our implementation too, but it is going to take some hand holding for now to
yeah.
get the implementation completed as per the architecture and adhere to the architecture. Yes,
I
that's
should
what we're
yeah.
saying.
Yeah, I should say, okay, in a 4 hour run, I came up with something that had three issues. The AI easily handled the three issues as I pointed them out, and the whole thing ran. And it worked as intended.
Okay, so that's fine.
Yep,
But we do want to circle back to the architecture and the
yep,
implementation guides to fix that. But
yep,
I'd say what I'm hearing for now is let's put what we have live for
yep,
people so that they can play with it and help us,
yep,
figure this out, right? Okay.
yes.
So getting the blueprint and the primer live for the personal AI architecture to me would be a to-do this week. It
This
doesn't
week,
have to
yep,
be perfect, but we can point out
yep,
where we know there's weaknesses. And then the second is it sounds like we have the implementation that we are going to build BrainDrive off of completed.
yep,
Yes?
yes,
Okay.
yes. I
So
oh,
we
in fact,
want to,
hold on. I
yeah.
have one thing I'm doing today, and that is the discovery of MCP tools, and putting them in user prefs. Like I said, we had a few implementation things that were the issues. That was it.
Okay. But the initial version of BrainDrive is just going to be focused on the local file system
Yep,
and doing this interview spec and build plan process.
yep.
Is there additional work that needs to be done to get that
Nope,
going? Okay, so
nope.
that's done.
Yep, yep. That's done, and I can push that one up. The only
Okay.
thing, like I said, I'm more gearing up for the interface I'm about to hit.
Okay. All right. So there's two things that I think we need to get live with BrainDrive. The first is we need a working implementation of the architecture and the internals,
Yep,
right? Um, and then we need two of the three externals working, right? We
yep,
need an interface hooked up to the gateway,
yep,
and we need to be able to use models through the provider API. And we've said we're going to start with OpenRouter,
yep.
right? Calling external tools, from my perspective, for this initial V1 launch where we're
Mhm.
focused on the local file system is unnecessary. Is
Yep,
that accurate?
yeah, yep. It's not
Okay.
part of the original.
So in terms of order of priority,
Yep,
it sounds like getting the interface. We have models. Can
yep,
we can use models via OpenRouter now, correct?
yep,
That's
yep,
working or no?
yep, yep. No, that's working
Okay.
completely and
Okay.
handles tool calling.
Okay. And then so really the only thing that's left to get live is getting the interface hooked up
Yep,
to the architecture.
yes,
So I would say that's the number one priority, and the tool calling stuff is mm, pushed to the side
yep.
until we get live.
Okay. I'm
Does
good.
that
Yep. No,
does
no, no,
that
no,
make
no,
sense?
no, no. I was only handling it because the truth is I already have all the MCP work. It's just low hanging fruit, and it gives me a better vision of pushing data into memory so that that can become exportable. Does that make sense? Because we want tools to be in memory where instead of some outlying file or something like that, it needs to be where, hey, I have these tools and I have them set up to be XYZ because they're my preference. And so that if I export my data, I can conceivably put this somewhere else and it works.
Um, will I be? But while the primary use case, or really the only
Yep.
use case, is the local file system and editing these files,
Exactly.
that's
That's
not
why I said
needed,
yes.
correct?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Not needed.
Okay. So we definitely want that.
Yep.
Let's get live
Yep.
and testing with, okay.
Yep.
And have you had a chance to look at the interface
Yep.
yet, or
No,
you
no,
have?
yeah, I
Okay.
looked at it both the other day, and that's when I noticed something, or yesterday, and I noticed some
Yeah.
things were kind of, I was like,
Yeah.
that's why it's the email. Started reading on that this morning.
And you
Uh,
saw that I did actually not push some of those changes live after all.
yeah, yeah, exactly. That's why I was
Okay.
like, something's not, something
Yeah.
wasn't adding up correctly
Yeah.
from what you
Okay. So
said, and
that
so I
that should
see.
all be pushed
Yep.
now.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. And
And
I'm still,
what? Go
go ahead.
ahead. Sorry.
I'm still seeing that our major hurdle is going to be, I'll call it the adapter layer that's going to sit in front of the gateway. And then plugging, and this is where it's like, I'm hoping that I've built this smart enough where the tool calling is going to take care of the abstraction for me. So when the interface comes up and it says, hey, you need to put an API key in so you can use OpenRouter, you put the API key in, and that's all handled through tool calling and handling and pushing data correctly. Um, so that could just pop up with a light on and it works because it worked in testing without an interface. So that's my hope when like that. If it doesn't work, that's not an issue because it's just a matter of telling it this is what you need to do.
Okay. So the first step is getting OpenRouter working in the interface. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, yes. Because once OpenRouter clicks in, now I have the lights on. Now it's time to bake some bread, and
Okay.
that's where we get into the projects lists and things of that nature.
Okay. So first step is OpenRouter live in interface.
Yep.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. And once that is done, what's the next step?
The next step comes down to the uh, getting the interface to populate because we now have we have the model, we have tool calling. Now we have to leverage the memory and our different projects that we have, and we have to populate it. We haven't done anything other than we're trying to display all of the correct data. And when you first bring up the system, it does populate the basic structure of your memory for you. I need to take you put in some details that I didn't have that initial one. I need to add those into mine. That's 2 seconds, but it still needs to take place so that when this comes up, it'll say BrainDrive plus one, it'll say finance, it'll say fitness. These will all be changeable and all like that, but they need to be there for that initial population. And then from there, we start going through, hey, the 5 minutes of introduce yourself. Let me show you what I can do type thing. We're
Yeah.
right here.
Okay. So um, my understanding, which may be wrong in terms of how this works currently,
Yep.
is when you install BrainDrive locally via Docker,
Mm-hmm.
it mounts a library folder onto your local machine that has these folders within it.
Yep.
Okay. And it also is pulling, like, these aren't hard coded into this interface. It's pulling this
Yep.
project list from your memory.
Yep. That is why we have to get the tool calling enabled first, because of that way it can start actively engaging your memory through tool calling and then populate the interface.
Internal tool calling, though, right?
Yes, it's internal tool calling.
So, step two, it sounds like after we get the provider API
Yep.
working with OpenRouter,
Yep.
step two is um, get internal tool calling working.
Correct.
Okay. Okay. All right. Now, I should be able to delete a project from here,
Yep.
and it should remove it from the interface, but not my library.
Okay. I have to figure out in the back end where your memory exists so it knows I keep you, but I don't show you type stuff.
Yes, and I think that's because this is coming from like a list, right? That's being updated based
Yep.
on what is here and not it's pulling the file structure every time.
Ah,
Because I do think you're going to want to have files within your library that you may not want in this sidebar right here. Or also, let's say, for example, I have a project and it's the BrainDrive interface,
yep.
so I'm going to rename this to the BrainDrive interface, right?
Yep.
And then when we're done with the interface as a project and I'm not working on it anymore, it's in production, I'm just going to delete this. I'm going to remove it from here, but we're still going to want that context to
Yep.
remain in the library, right? So
Or if you
that's
go
why
to
I think,
version, because if you go to version 2, you might want to draw from it. I can see that, it makes sense to me.
okay.
Yep.
And then now I think in the future, but we don't need this for version one, there might be the question of, okay, does that archive? Is there a way to archive it?
Yep.
That type of thing, but we don't need that right now. And then I do want to be able to add a project. And if I add a project, then it should add a folder
Yep.
into my library.
Yep.
Make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So that's an important
And when it adds it, it should create the basic file structure within as well, where you have a spec doc, a plan doc, the agent .md. So everything should auto-populate as in there, but not necessarily done anything yet because you haven't done the interview process. You haven't said, hey, what is this about? You just
correct.
said, hey, build this.
Yeah, and I would envision like you go into this like here, there's no files yet. Ooh, there's so I need to say I probably want to add create a new file here, but we'll leave that. So I want to say, please create a spec doc.
That's what I was saying. It creates those for you when you
Yeah,
create the
they'll be
project.
here. Yeah,
Yep.
exactly. So you're not actually you don't have to overcome this. Okay. So I want to create a spec doc for the BrainDrive interface. Please include a template of what we should populate this spec doc with and add the file. Let's see what happens. Yeah, so it should be adding it to this
Hmm.
project, but because there's no agent.md file here, it's
Yep.
not going to know. It's probably going to create a new folder for this, but let's see.
Oh,
I wonder if I refresh this, if it's going to be there. No.
no.
Where did
Yeah.
it create it? Okay, so we'll have to figure that out, but
Yep.
you get the idea
Yep.
here.
Yep.
At least it did create it.
Yeah.
So we have to figure out, and that's what I'm going to be working on this week is the agent.md file for BrainDrive plus one, which will be you're an assistant for this
Yep.
entire library here. Here's what that library is. Here are the files within there, et cetera. And then each of these, the career, the relationships, etc., will have its own agent.md that defines the personality and what the focus of that project page is going to be, right?
Yes, because that doesn't go into, I'll call coding the interface and like that, because I know I'll have to make adjustments like that. That'll come down to you going, hey, in this one, this is the default information that's
Yeah.
coming with it. And then
So
I
what I'm
in
going to do is just do rough drafts for all of them quickly with
yep,
AI, and then I'll come back and refine. That way you have them,
yep,
to work on. And that's that. Okay. So step three, once tool calling is working,
yep.
is getting these
The
files dialed
interaction.
in,
Yep, the interaction down.
getting the interaction down. Okay. And then step four after that is what?
The intro one. I've turned you on for the first time.
Yeah, well, that's an interaction though,
Okay,
right?
well, yeah, but it's a different kind of interaction
I
because
agree.
yeah, so I was just separating it in my head of
Yep.
where I would
Brain
like
drive
that.
plus one.
Yep. Then we need to go through all of the settings, everything, and make sure that basically we're going to start the dot the I process.
Okay. What does that mean?
As in because we want to be able to select a model from here. So we need to make that connection of now we're going to select models. Go through every of the settings and dot the I's. Because you have a model or you have the original open router hooked up, the provider's there. We have the basic structure of what you're seeing on the left. Now we have your basic default agent spec that's going to be sitting there in each one of these as they're created the first time, and then finally get the settings in place. And from that point, we have a testable product.
Okay. And is there any settings that we need to have in place besides selecting the model?
The API key, which you already have. Profile's not necessary right at this point in time. Pop it up just to see if there's anything that I can't remember off the top of my head. Default model, owner profile. Oh, the export. It needs to be there. That's it. I mean, and your settings is pretty short anyway, so you don't have a bunch. So I'm don't plan on adding a bunch. My goal
Export
is to keep it
library.
simple.
So here's what I would say. Um, so I would say export library is really a managed hosting thing. I don't think we actually need it for local. So I think we cross off I'll put export library under the managed hosting mode
Yep.
instead of the local mode. And also probably owner profile too for now. We can
Yep.
just take off, right?
Yep. So if we get the provider and the model handled, we're good on settings. We should be rocking.
Okay. So the four steps to get this live locally
Yep.
are open router live in the interface,
Yep.
get the interface to populate with the right folders
Yep.
and files. Get the internal, I'm sorry, first step one, open router working.
Yep.
Step two, get the internal tool calling working. Step
Yep.
three, getting the interaction down. And step four, the select model, which feels like we should just move to step one. That's
Yeah.
really about.
Only a nuance break in the two because for me to get the interface working, I just need to plug the model in there. But for the user to selection, I just need to take one more step. And if we
Okay,
put the
all right.
step
So we
ahead,
will leave that.
yeah,
Okay, because someone will be able to play. They might have to put the model in via the terminal, but once they do that one time, just like I did
yep,
here, you're
yep,
rocking. So someone will
yep,
be able to play with it. Okay. So step one is open router live in the interface. Step two is getting the interface to populate. Step Oh, but we need tool calling working. Yeah.
exactly. That's why the model has to be in there.
So step one is open router live in the interface.
Yep,
Step two is internal tool calling working. Step three is the interaction and population of files, right?
yep, yep,
Of files. And step four is selecting the model.
yep,
Those are the next four steps in that order, yeah?
yes,
Okay. Now after that's our MVP right there from my perspective.
yep,
Okay. After that, the next step is manage hosting.
yep,
Okay. And what we need to add for managed hosting is step five is we need these other settings,
yep,
right?
yep,
We need account and billing, and then we need the model provider is going to be managed by BrainDrive, so we'll have to figure all that out, right? And then
okay.
yeah, go
One
ahead.
additional thing's missing on this for I think overall will be where we have export library because it only makes sense for a managed hosting situation. We need import library because if you're running this locally, you need to bring this in.
I agree with that. However, I think that initially to get live with
Yep,
managed hosting, like these are going to be people that are using BrainDrive for the first time in this concept that we have.
yep,
So I don't think we need that to launch, but I
yep.
do
No,
think
no, not
we,
to launch. But
yeah.
I just it crossed my mind. It's like, hey, we're exporting something, but at some point we're going to need to import it too.
Okay. And then we'll need the nav stuff, which we can talk with him on
Yep,
Wednesday about.
yep,
So we'll come
yes,
up with the managed hosting. I think for this week, if we can get these four things rocking,
yep,
that would be great.
yep. My
All right.
goal is to because 2 full days by Wednesday when we meet, I should be able to hand this off to you. I may have some cleanup to do, but you should be playing with this on Wednesday so you can fine tune your agent M.MD, the prompts and stuff like that. And you go, hey, let's change this here or whatever like that. You should be able to have that time period from Wednesday on to start cleaning that up.
Okay. All right, great. Anything else we should discuss today?
Nope, because I'm focused on they keep it simple.
Yes.
I've been told every time my brain goes, but we can keep it simple.
Yes, correct. We can always add more later. Let's just see if there's anything up on the chat. No. All right. Great. So that's our call for this week. As we talked about at the beginning of the call, our mission here at BrainDrive is to build a superior user-owned alternative to big tech AI systems. We do these calls every Monday at 10 a.m. Eastern Times, live stream on YouTube, and post the recordings over on our community forums at community.braindrive.ai. We encourage you to join us either place and to participate, and let's build the future of user owned AI together. And with that, we'll see you next week.
Have a good one.
Thank you.